So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News and Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time. Now, just watching this lecture would be job half done on your part. Why? Because just watching this lecture won't allow you to remember these current affairs for long periods of time. You will quickly forget them. Now, what you need to do is to revise these current affairs just after watching them. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram platform. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. So do check that out. Do make the necessary time for revision. It's very important. All right. Without further delay, let's begin today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. Okay, so let's start. So daily current affairs, 13th of August, Wednesday. And here is the topics list. Okay. Number one topic on this list is National Sports Governance Bill 2025. It was passed by Lok Sabha earlier. Now it has been passed by Rajya Sabha, and it's a matter of time that it will receive the assent of the president, and then it will become an act of parliament or law. Okay. So National Sports Governance Bill is going to be the new law. So we need to talk about this law or bill because it will regulate all the sports governing bodies in India. Clear? So we'll talk about this. Then, well, you must be wondering that USA is after India as far as tariffs are concerned. USA says that because India buys from Russia, that is why we are applying these tariffs. But more than India, China buys from Russia. Yet, USA is not applying that kind of strong tariffs on China as it is applying on India. Why? Because China itself has some leverage over USA. And if China is in an open war with USA, economic open war, China can hurt USA. So what are these advantages that China has over USA, which is preventing USA from applying these strong tariffs on China, which it has applied on India, right? We'll talk about this. US trade truce with China. Clear? Then we'll talk about India's semiconductor mission, because under this mission, 4 semiconductor fabrication units or factories that will produce semiconductor chips for electronics have been approved. 2 are in Odisha, 2 factories in Odisha, 1 in Punjab, the other in Andhra Pradesh. So this was in the news. Now we need to have some information about India's semiconductor mission because questions might be asked. Okay. And last topic is Baloch Liberation Army, BLA, has been declared a foreign terrorist organization by USA. Okay, this is basically a hand of friendship towards Pakistan from USA side. Okay, because BLA is fighting for independence in Pakistan. Pakistan considers it a terrorist organization, and now USA has designated it as a FTO, foreign terrorist organization. Okay, so we'll talk about BLA, we'll talk about Balochistan issue in brief, and we'll also talk about the significance of this move by USA. Okay, what does it mean to be a foreign terrorist organization? What will happen? Clear? So these are the 4 topics that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is National Sports Governance Bill 2025. Now, you see, a few weeks back, Government of India launched National Sports Policy. Okay, we have covered it in our current affairs lectures as well. Okay, so National Sports Policy was released, and in that various objectives were outlined by Government of India when it comes to sports performance. Okay, now there are 2 objectives that are of significance. 2 objectives are the key objectives of India's National Sports Policy. One objective is that we need to increase the performance of our sportsmen. We need to improve our medals tally in Olympics, Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, right? We need to get more medals. For that, our sportsmen should have to perform better, right? This is one goal number 1. Goal number 2 is India wants to host the 2036 Olympics. For that, it is making a bid with International Olympics Committee. But International Olympics Committee has certain requirements which the sports bodies of India have to fulfill. Now, sports bodies of India, national sports bodies of India, have been accused of lack of transparency, lack of accountability, corruption, and many such things. Some sports bodies even had sexual misconduct allegations against them, right? If this thing continues, International Olympics Committee won't be comfortable awarding the host tag for 2036 Olympics to India. Okay, therefore we need to reform our sports governance architecture. Plus, by reforming our sports governance architecture, we will provide more facilities, more comfortable environment to our sportsmen so that they can focus more on preparing for these games rather than getting involved in these political issues, right? So by reforming sports governance architecture, sports governance bodies of India, you will improve the performance of our sportsmen, which will improve our medals tally. And number two is, well, you have better chances of hosting 2036 Olympics. Yes, so for that purpose, National Sports Policy was launched, and under that, well, government promised that they are going to reform the sports governance legal architecture in India. They are going to reform all the sports governing body for all sports in India. Yes, and to fulfill that objective outlined in the National Sports Policy, well, Government of India, not Government of India, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they both have passed National Sports Governance Bill. Okay, again, this bill is directed towards reforming the sports governance architecture. So let's talk about this, okay? So National Sports Governance Bill 2025, it has been approved by Lok Sabha, it has been approved by Rajya Sabha. Now, as of now, it awaits the assent of the President. But it's a matter of time. President will give her assent, and then this bill will actually become an act or law. Okay. Now, what are the key provisions of this law? First of all, well, the main aim is that you improve transparency, accountability, in sports governing bodies. There should be no corruption, no political interference. There is a lot of political interference by ministers, MLAs, MPs, okay? And there is a lot of corruption in sports governance bodies. So you need to improve transparency, you need to improve accountability. Plus, there are some guidelines that are issued by Olympics Charter. Okay, these guidelines have to be followed. So National Sports Governance Bill basically tries to follow the guidelines of Olympics Charter. Clear? These guidelines are for sports governance bodies. Clear? There are some issues with the elections of the members of these sports federations. So that has to be reformed. So all these things are covered under National Sports Governance Bill. So basically this creates a new regulatory architecture, okay, of national sports governance bodies, federations, sports federations, okay. Now, as per this law, well, there shall be a National Olympics Committee which will take care of Olympics, okay. There shall be a National Paralympics Committee for Paralympics, okay, for Divyangjan, for people who have disabilities, physical disabilities, Olympics for them. And, well, this law regulates all the national sports governance bodies of all sports in India that are represented in Olympics. Right? So, national sports governance bodies shall follow the guidelines of Olympics Charter, okay, and therefore they shall be affiliated to the International Olympics Committee, okay. For Paralympics, International Paralympics Committee, so they shall be affiliated, and these national bodies will have state sports governance bodies. So one at national level and then at every state level. Okay, these state bodies shall be affiliated to national sports governance bodies for every sport, wrestling, boxing, everything. Clear? Now the major problem is that these national sports governance bodies are full of corruption. They are full of electoral malpractices, political interference. These are some of the problems that athletes have to deal with. So how would you reform all of this? Okay, so there are the key provisions. Clear? So for all governing national sports bodies, above them, there shall be a national sports board. Okay, The National Sports Board shall issue guidelines which all these bodies have to follow. And National Sports Board is the authority that will give recognition, official recognition to these federations. If these federations are not officially recognized, well, Government of India will not provide any funding to them. And without any money, they can't run that sport. Okay? So for official recognition, funding, National Sports Board is there. Now, if there are any sports related disputes, okay, then you have created a special tribunal for that to adjudicate sports related disputes. That is, National Sports Tribunal shall be established, okay, and to ensure fairness in the election process of these governing bodies, okay. Well, a national panel of electoral officers shall be appointed by central government. Now remember this National Sports Board, National Sports Tribunal, National Panel of electoral officers, they shall be appointed by center. Central government has the power to appoint them. And under this law, central government has been given some unusually large powers. As per the provision of this law, it says that central government can exempt any sports federation from any of the provisions of this bill. So if central government wants that, well, Wrestling Federation of India should be exempt from following the provisions of this law, central government can do that. Okay, so central government has been given this special power. Clear? One more thing is there. You know, all these sports federations, all these sports bodies do come under RTI. You know about right to information, right? You can know anything about these sports bodies by filing an RTI application. And the reason why you can file an RTI application against these sports governance bodies is because they are categorized as public authorities. So you can file an RTI application against any public authority. So these sports bodies are public authorities, so you do that. But there is one thing. In this law, the definition of public authority is given as far as sports bodies are concerned. And this law says that if there is a sports body that doesn't receive any funding from the government, it won't be categorized as public authority and you can't file an RTI application against them. Okay? The case in point is BCCI. BCCI is a private organization that regulates cricket in India. Okay, BCCI does not receive any funding from Government of India. It doesn't require any funding. It is one of the richest sports governing bodies in the world, not just in India, world. So they don't need any funding. And because they don't take any funding, they're not categorized as public authority. And because they are not categorized as public authority, you cannot file an RTI application against them. So this is a big blow to people who are demanding transparency in BCCI in cricket. Okay, many courts have also argued, many experts have said that BCCI should be made more transparent. But under this law, well, you can't file an RTI application against BCCI. Clear? So BCCI is exempt. Make sense? Now, along with this bill, another bill was passed, okay, which was called National Anti-Doping Amendment Bill. Okay. Now, doping refers to when athletes take banned performance enhancement drugs, when they take injections or drugs to improve their performance. That is banned in competition. Okay. Now, to prevent that, there are anti-doping agencies which check whether athletes have taken these performance enhancing drugs, steroids or anything. Clear? Now in India, doping is prevented by an agency called National Anti-Doping Agency. Now this National Anti-Doping Agency is accused of malpractices, corruption and all that. Okay. Therefore, many people were saying make NADA more independent, so that it is not under any political pressure and all. Okay. And all over the world, there is also one body that regulates doping in the entire world, and that is WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency. Okay. So World Anti-Doping Agency has given some guidelines. Well, under this new amendment, we are following all these guidelines so that we are in line with global best practices. Clear? So NADA has been given more independence, and India's anti-doping regulatory architecture has also been improved. This again improves our credentials in International Olympic Committee. Okay, and with those improved credentials, we have a very good chance of getting the bid for Olympics in 2036. Clear? Make sense? That's about it. That's all you need to know. Now let's quickly shift our focus to US trade truce with China. Okay, now hear me out carefully. You see, as soon as Donald Trump got elected, Donald Trump was very anti-China. Donald Trump said that China applies high tariffs on American goods. Okay, and China is our geopolitical rival. Plus, China is supporting Russia in its war against Ukraine, which is bad for the world. That's what USA says. Okay, so therefore, when Donald Trump came to power, well, he said that he is going to apply 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. Currently on India, the tariff rate is 50%, and that is creating so many problems. Imagine 145% tariffs on China. Okay, the idea was to basically make China scared of American tariffs and toe the line which America wants it to take. Yes, so this is something that Donald Trump threatened China with. But China was not scared. Okay, and China retaliated. Okay, China took some of their own steps to basically make USA scared. Okay, so USA tried to scare China. China retaliated by scaring USA, and that scaring tactic by China worked. And that is why both USA and China came to a deal. And that deal was, Donald Trump said that we will postpone these 145% tariffs until we reach an agreement. Okay, that was what Donald Trump said. Clear? We will postpone these 145% tariffs until we reach an agreement. Clear? That was because China applied pressure from its side as well. And USA, Donald Trump, basically, many people say, chickened out a little. And that is why this temporary halt was given to China. Okay? Because China also has the power to hurt USA economically. Clear? That is not the case with India. India cannot hurt USA economically by that much. Okay, we can't hurt USA that much economically, but China can. That is why, like a typical bully, okay, USA is applying pressure on India by applying 50% tariffs. What USA said was that because India is buying from Russia, we are going to apply these tariffs on India. Well, China buys way more than India from Russia, but USA cannot apply those same tariffs on China because China can retaliate with significant things. China can retaliate, and China's retaliation will hurt America. And like a typical bully, that's what bullies do, right? If you can stand up to a bully and you can hurt a bully, that bully will never try to bully you. Bullies only try to bully powerless people. Now, in this regard, India cannot hurt USA by that much. Yes, we can hurt them a little bit, but not by that much. That is why they are applying these tariffs on us. But China, of what basically USA accuses India of a lot of things. China is a bigger culprit in all of these things. They are supporting Russia like anything. Yet USA can't do it because China can retaliate. Now, what are these advantages that China has over USA? Let's talk about these things. Okay. So hear me out carefully. USA trade truce with China. So recently, the suspension of 145% tariffs on China, that was the trade truce deal between USA and China. Recently, Donald Trump announced that we are going to further extend this, basically saying we won't apply 145% tariff on China for another 3 months. Okay. Now, why is USA doing this, or why is USA being forced to do this? Because China can retaliate. And how can they retaliate? Okay. First of all, China's leverage. Use this word leverage in your answers. Okay. So what is China's leverage against USA? China has following advantages against USA. First of all, when USA announced that they are going to apply 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, China announced that we are going to retaliate by applying 125% tariffs on American goods. Now the thing is, China buys a lot from America, and by applying these tariffs, it will hurt American exports a lot more. Clear? So China retaliated by saying we will apply 125% tariffs on you. So this was one. Okay. The second thing was, and this is where USA got troubled. This thing. Okay. There are certain minerals which are called critical minerals. We have discussed about them. These critical minerals are required everywhere. In the electronics industry, in the battery manufacturing industry, okay, in aerospace, defense, everywhere. These are critical minerals. You want to produce electric vehicles, you need batteries, you need lithium for that. Okay. Now, China has a sort of monopoly over the supply chain of these critical minerals. Now, China controls, there are some critical minerals which China controls. I mean, 90% of that supply chain is controlled by China. China exports critical minerals to the entire world, and these critical minerals are required. So what did China do? When USA threatened China with these tariffs, what China did, you know what? China applied some export restrictions of these critical minerals on USA, which disrupted the supply of lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements to USA. And American auto industry, American defense industry, American aerospace industry, American electronics industry, they are all dependent on the supply of these critical minerals. And China controls their supply. So China said that if you are going to apply these tariffs, we are going to stop the supply of these critical minerals. And that scared the hell out of everyone in USA. Okay, that is why there is this truce deal. Clear? We'll talk about the kind of monopoly China has over critical minerals because it is threatening for India as well. India also requires critical minerals. Okay, and the other thing, this is very important. Okay, Donald Trump's biggest supporters are farmers of USA, the farm belt of USA. They are Donald Trump's biggest support base. Okay. Now these farmers produce a lot of agricultural commodities which they export to the entire world. Now China buys a lot of these agricultural commodities from USA. Soybean, beef, pork, a lot of these things are bought from USA. Clear? Now when Donald Trump threatened China, China decided to reduce its imports from USA of these agricultural commodities. Therefore, exports of agricultural commodities from USA declined, harming these farmers, which are the biggest support base of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump had to bend the knee. Okay, he had to dial down on his rhetoric. He had to do that. So these are the three reasons. These are the three things that protected China from the onslaught of Donald Trump's tariff policy. Clear? Make sense? India doesn't have any of these things. Okay? So that is why we are being bullied to this extent. Nonetheless, the most important, I told you, the most important leverage that China has is that of critical minerals. Right? So let's talk about China's chokehold on critical minerals. Okay? Now there are so many critical minerals. The most important ones are lithium, cobalt, nickel, okay, and rare earth elements. Okay, these are some of the more important critical minerals. Now, China controls the production of these critical minerals as well as the processing of these critical minerals, because once you take these critical minerals out of the ground, you have to process them. China has the largest processing capacity. In fact, in case of rare earth elements, 90% of processing capacity of rare earth elements in the entire world is that with China. So China, in a way, has a monopoly over critical minerals. And that is what they used. Okay, and that is what they are using against almost all the other countries with which it has a geopolitical rivalry, including India. Okay, plus, if you control the supply of anything, if you have a monopoly on the supply of anything, you also control the price of that thing. And if China decides to increase the price of these critical minerals by, let's suppose, 50%, all these defense, aerospace, auto industries which rely on these critical minerals, they'll get destroyed because their margins, profit margins would reduce. They would force Donald Trump to back down. Okay? And well, we all know critical minerals are strategically important, right? So for example, I'll give you some examples. So I told you rare earth elements, 90% of their supply is under China's control. Yes, rare earth elements are used in electric vehicles, electric motors, and many other things. Then there are two rare earth elements. One is germanium and gallium. They are used in semiconductor industry, okay, infrared industry, many other industries. Well, China has near monopoly in this also. Make sense? So China has a lot of leverage which it can wield against many countries of the world. Clear? This is not a facility or a luxury that India has, and that is why India has to balance it out with other things. Let's see what happens in the future. Okay. Now let's move on to third news item, and that is India's semiconductor mission. Okay. Now the reason why we are discussing India's semiconductor mission, despite the fact that it was launched in 2021, so it belonged to the current affairs of 2021, but no, it belongs to the current affairs of 2025 and 26 as well, because, well, under this mission, Government of India is setting up factories of semiconductor manufacturing every now and then. The reason why India's semiconductor mission was in the news recently was because government recently approved 4 semiconductor chip manufacturing factories in India. 4 factories, okay? 2 would be set up in Odisha, 1 in Punjab, 1 in Andhra Pradesh. Clear? So for that reason, India's semiconductor mission was again in the news. That's why we are discussing it again in the news. Okay? So let's talk about India's semiconductor mission. But before starting with India's semiconductor mission, let me first tell you what semiconductors are and how important they are. Let's start with how important they are. You see, semiconductor are these electronic chips. Okay? These electronic chips that are there in almost all electronics. And you all know that everything around you is electronics only. You need electronics for your smartphones, for your kitchen appliances, for your cars, for your country's fighter jets, for your country's satellites. Everywhere you need electronics. If you want to advance in AI, artificial intelligence, you need electronics for that as well. And all these electronics rely on these semiconductor chips. Clear? Now, there are only a few countries that have the capacity to produce these semiconductor chips, highly advanced semiconductor chips. One such country is Taiwan. Taiwan has near monopoly as far as these semiconductor chips are concerned. And only a few other countries have this capacity to produce semiconductor chips which are used in every electronic item that you can see around you. Okay? Even China does not have the capacity to produce these semiconductor chips on a mass scale. Now, because everything around you is basically electronic items, electronics only. Therefore, well, you need these semiconductor chips to run your economy, because even your economy is now being run by electronic items only. Yes, so you need semiconductor chips for that. The problem is that India does not produce semiconductor chips. And because of that, India is dependent on these countries. India imports these semiconductor chips for its electronics industry. Now that makes India vulnerable. What if tomorrow that company or that country decides to stop the supply of these semiconductor chips to India? India's entire economy would collapse. Therefore, in 2021, we launched India's semiconductor mission. Okay. Now, manufacturing these highly complicated semiconductor chips is very difficult. Okay. Very complicated, very difficult. That is why India launched this entire project in mission mode in 2021. And the aim was to make India global semiconductor manufacturing hub, so that we become self-reliant when it comes to semiconductor chips. We are not dependent on any other country. It is for that reason this mission was launched. Clear? So let's talk about this mission, okay? So India Semiconductor Mission. Now remember, India Semiconductor Mission is part of a broader program called Semicon India program. Okay, so this India Semiconductor Mission is part of Semicon India program. The Semicon India program has a budget of 76,000 crore rupees and it was launched in 2021 with a budget of 26,000 crore rupees. And India Semiconductor Mission is also an organization that implements this, okay, under Digital India Corporation. Nonetheless, those details are mentioned in your notes. Clear? So Semicon India program has the aim of making India a global manufacturing hub of semiconductors so that we can satisfy our own requirements of semiconductor chips. Not just our own requirements of semiconductor chips, we also become a major exporter to the entire world. We need self-reliance in this area. This area is strategically important. Clear? Now, under Semicon India program, well, there are basically 4 schemes. Okay, so under the Semicon India program, there are 4 schemes. Clear? Now, what are these 4 schemes? To understand those 4 schemes, well, you need to know how semiconductor chips are manufactured. Okay, so these are the key terms that you need to know about semiconductors. Okay, then we'll come to the 4 schemes under Semicon India program. Okay, the first step in making a semiconductor chip which will be used in electronics is design. You need to design that semiconductor chip. Okay, and designing is very complicated. Where the transistors would be, what will be the circuit of this semiconductor chip. Design is very important. And there is a company, multinational company called Intel and Nvidia also. They are pioneers in this. They are design experts. Okay. Then after you have designed, then you take these silicon wafers, because semiconductor chips are made up of silicons. Okay. And on these based on the design, it's like an architectural design. So architect gives you a design and then construction workers construct based on that design. You understand this analogy of building buildings, right? So architect gives you the design and then you build the house according to that. So design is first given, then you basically manufacture those chips. On that semiconductor plate or wafer, you basically etch the circuits, you create circuits. Okay, this is known as fabrication. So semiconductor fabrication. Then after fabrication, what you do is sometimes 2 or 3 semiconductors have to be joined together in a particular pattern for a circuit to complete based on the electronic item in which it will be used. Clear? So all of that has to be done, then it is assembled. Okay. Then after assembly, it is basically tested. And then it is finally packaged into different materials so that there is no harm to the semiconductor chip. These things have to be done for a proper chip to be manufactured. Design is complicated, fabrication is complicated, assembly, testing and packaging is not that complicated. Okay, now let's talk about this. Okay, now let's talk about the 4 schemes. Okay, now design is something that is very complicated and only a few companies do that. Now, under Semicon India program, Government of India will provide fiscal benefits, monetary benefits to companies who are going to get themselves involved in this business. Okay, what are those monetary benefits? First of all, anyone setting up a semiconductor fabrication, you remember fabrication now? They will get 50% fiscal support, 50% monetary support. So for semiconductor fabrication, there is a different scheme. Then there are some electronics that are used in display screens. So for that, you have a separate scheme under Semicon India. Again, you'll get 50% financial support. Then, remember I told you assembly. After fabrication, the less complicated part is assembly, testing and packaging, right? For that, there are separate schemes. There is a separate scheme. This is the third scheme. So any company which is a low technology company which cannot design, fabricate, okay, they can only do assembling and packaging and testing. This is a scheme for that. And then India also wants to be innovative. Therefore, there are some companies who can design good quality chips. So if there is any company that can design good quality chips, there is a separate scheme for that also called Design Linked Incentive Scheme. So these are the 4 schemes under Semiconductor India Mission. Clear? Rest all the other details are mentioned in your notes, so just go through that. Okay, I try to make this topic as simple as possible for you guys, but just go through the notes. Okay, and I will quickly shift our focus to last news item of the day, and that is Baloch Liberation Army declared a foreign terrorist organization FTO by USA. Okay, now we have covered this topic of FTO designation by USA before also. You know who conducted the Pahalgam terror attack? It was the Resistance Front, TRF, which they say is affiliated to Lashkar-e-Taiba, a UN designated terror organization. Okay. Now India was accusing Pakistan of supporting TRF. Okay. But no country recognized TRF as a terrorist organization. But in a big diplomatic victory for India, USA designated TRF as a global terrorist organization, a foreign terrorist organization, FTO. And with that designation, a lot of problems are created for TRF as far as its global operations are concerned. Okay, their funding becomes difficult. Any supporters of theirs who are supporting them, it is very difficult for them to operate in America. All these things happen. We'll talk about these things, but this happened. So it was a big diplomatic victory for India that USA supports India in its fight against terrorism because it has declared TRF as a, well, terrorist organization, foreign terrorist organization. Now, well, Pakistan is made up of 4 provinces: Punjab, Sindh, third one is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which was earlier called Northwest Frontier Province, and 4th is Balochistan. Balochistan is the largest province of Pakistan. Okay, it is the largest province of Pakistan as far as area is concerned. But as far as the population is concerned, only 3.6% of people in Pakistan reside in Balochistan. Okay, Balochistan's share in Pakistan's population is 3.6%. So it is very less, very scarcely populated. But why is Balochistan significant? The thing is, Balochistan is rich in natural gas, rich in gold, rich in copper, rich in many other minerals. Some even say crude oil. Plus, Balochistan is strategically located. It shares a coastline close to the Persian Gulf, from where many oil shipments come to India. Balochistan is very significant. But the history of Balochistan tells us that many Balochis do not consider themselves to be a part of Pakistan. What happened was, in British India, well, Balochistan was divided into many princely states. The biggest princely state was Khan of Kalat, the princely state monarch. Okay, the biggest princely state was Kalat. Okay. Now, when British left India, they gave the option of becoming independent to the princely states. Princely states were given this option: either go with India, go with Pakistan, or remain independent. So Kalat, which is the major chunk of Balochistan, it decided, its monarch, Khan of Kalat, he decided to stay independent, and he declared independence on 12th August 1947. Okay, but this huge territory of Balochistan was strategically very important for Pakistan. That is why Pakistan army did not allow that to happen. Balochistan remained independent for a few days only, and Pakistan army invaded and forced Balochistan to accede to Pakistan, and from then onwards, Balochistan is a Pakistani territory. So many Balochis have not forgotten that we were forcefully annexed by Pakistan. Yet, many other things done by Pakistani army compounded the problems. Okay, so Pakistani army or Pakistan's elite is Punjabi dominated. They exploited Balochistan for their natural resources, but they did not give them any money in return. Okay, Balochistan is the most underdeveloped region of Pakistan. Yet, it is rich in natural resources. Those natural resources were taken away to Punjab, Pakistan. But Balochistan was not given any benefit of economic development. Okay, so Punjab prospered in Pakistan at the behest of, at the cost of, well, Balochistan's misery. That's why many Balochis became very angry. They started revolting. When they started revolting, Well, then Pakistan army conducted a brutal crackdown on these Balochi separatists. Hence, the separatist movement, or the movement to make Balochistan independent, gained momentum. And many of these organizations which were fighting for Balochistan's independence, they got together and they formed Baloch Liberation Army. And this Baloch Liberation Army has a suicide squad also, Majid Brigade. Okay, they conduct suicide attacks. Now, they have become hyperactive in the past couple of years. They have conducted so many attacks on Pakistani army. Clear? So, Pakistan considers them to be a terrorist organization, but well, the entire world was not recognizing that. Plus, Pakistan blames India of supporting Baloch Liberation Army. Clear? So, all this was going on. Now, as you all know, USA and Pakistan are coming close. They are coming together, okay, on many issues, and they are getting closer and closer, right? So, in an attempt to make Pakistan happy, well, USA designated BLA as a foreign terrorist organization. Clear? Now, what happens if your organization is designated as a foreign terrorist organization? Let's talk about that in brief. Okay. So, what happens? What is the significance? Well, this designation of FTO is as per Section 219 of Immigration and Nationality Act of America. Okay. Under this, giving logistical, financial and intelligence support to this terror organization, anyone giving this support to terror organization, well, that is criminal offense. Okay. You can freeze their assets, travel restrictions can be applied, and you can deny access to US financial system to the supporters of this organization as well, people who are supporting from outside. Okay. Now, we have discussed this. TRF, the Resistance Front, was also declared an FTO. That's about it. That's all you need to know. Okay. And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And please do not forget to revise this lecture. I repeat it every time. Okay. I say this every now and then, but it is important. So please do not forget to do that. And I shall be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.